story yesterday of GENCOs, that's the generating electricity companies, threatening to shut down power supply to transmission, of course, which will in turn affect distribution. They made that, will we say, is a threat now? I don't want to qualify it as a threat, but it did sound like one. On the back of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company's behavior towards them. We have this morning with us Dr. Joy Ogaji, who's the Executive Secretary Association of Power Generation Companies, to shed a little more light on why the GENCOs think that such a drastic action will be the way to go. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure being here.
Yes, we're happy to have you. We're just hoping that you would not shut down power. Well, can you tell us what the history of this is? Because we understand that you held a press conference, was it on Sunday? Laying very serious allegations or serious complaints against MBET. What exactly is the problem?
If I recall, on the 8th of September this year, MBET management sent a letter to the generating companies. If I'm proud to that letter, she called a meeting, I think about the 3rd or 7th. And
that's the DJ of MBET?
The MD.
MD of MBET.
MD of MBET.
Oh, that's Dr. Marilyn Amobi?
Yes.
Okay.
In that meeting, GENCOs were told that MBET will be taking over payment of gas invoices. To give you a background, the power sector is so structured that even NEC understands the sanctity of contracts, and going by the privity of contract, if you're not a party to the contract, I don't really think legally you have even a role to play. However, MBET on that day called the GENCOs and said, come, MBET will be taking over payment of your gas invoices. And the GENCOs like, no, we're not kids. We entered into that contract. We have payment obligations, and we can pay for our gas invoices. She said no, and that if you don't agree to these terms, government will not release the 600 billion, and that she has gotten approval from the presidency. I quote, if you go back to my first press conference. And so they tried to raise concerns, and she shut them out and told them that it's a take it or leave it. And so on that note...
Was there a reason given for that? Why MBET will want to take over gas payments?
Well, they asked for the reason. She said it is because GENCOs are not paying according to the percentage they receive from the market. Now, the way the power sector, and later on you can do your fact checks, is a generating company needs between 20 to 30% to be able to generate efficiently. And currently, if you are also listening to the news and on the power sector, recently the discos have been making only 15% remittance. So note, in a typical 100 naira, a generating company has just about 30 naira. The 60 naira goes to the gas suppliers. In fact, all our invoices, 60 to 65, goes to the gas suppliers. So if you now tell me to pay them 15% of their invoice, check the implication. 15% cost. If I take out 6.5% of 16%, what is left for me is about 4%. So now, 65%. What's going to be left for me will be something very small. That is not even up to my minimum market.
I'm trying to understand this.
Okay.
You already said of 100 naira.
Yes.
30 naira comes to you,
yes,
as the GENCOs. 60, 70, is this between
65, 70 goes to
the gas
suppliers.
So what is the percentage you're talking about again?
Now, the percentage I'm talking about, every month there is about 55 billion invoice that the GENCO sent through the market operator to MBET as power that has been put on the grid. Out of that amount, 15% of that is what is being paid by the discos.
Okay.
So now that 15% that comes to the GENCOs as payment for their 55 billion, Embed sent a prior request to the GENCOs that they should pay the same 15% of that of the gas invoice. The reason why I went back to the gas breakdown is for you to understand that the component of the GENCO invoice, 65% to 70%, is a gas cost. So if you look at the 15% that comes from the 55 billion, if you take out 65 to 70%, what is left is even not enough for the minimum requirement, which is like 30% for me to run and generate power continuously. This is why I gave you that background. So that the GENCOs told her that, sorry, this is not going to work. Because you shouldn't, the reason why Embed was established was to make the GENCOs whole. If the market is not able to pay me up to 100%, you will say you will make it up. Because that's the essence of the establishment of Embed. It's a buffer, it's a gap filler. But since 2015 till date, you have not filled any gap. Rather, you are distributing poverty. So we cannot carry out this, your directive. So that second meeting that I'm referring to was the meeting where she was mandating that since they refuse to pay that 15%, she will implement it herself, notwithstanding that GENCOs will not survive. So the GENCOs told her, okay, put it in writing. She sent a letter to them, giving them 3 days ultimatum, that within 3 days, if they do not revert to her with a board resolution appointing her as the person that will be paying their gas supply, not only that, too, and that for doing that for them, she will charge 0.75% as an administrative charge. Now, the question any Nigerian will want to ask, first and foremost, who appointed you as the person that wants to pay the gas suppliers? It was a personal decision. You say you want to take over. We are even struggling with you taking over my obligation in the contract that you are not a party to. And then now I have to pay an administrative charge. It's like a debtor now deciding how much you will pay him for paying you your debt. Because as far as we are concerned, by the terms of the PPA, Embed is a debtor to us. We are creditor to Embed, we are supplied power, you pay us 100%. That's what the PPA says.
I'm listening to your story,
Okay.
but what I also know is that a huge component of your cost is to the gas suppliers.
Yes.
And we understand that the gas suppliers have been threatening that, you know, they will not supply Nigeria gas anymore because they're not getting their monies as and when due, and also the market is not favorable to them. In other words, the market outside of Nigeria is more favorable to gas suppliers because of the prices that those ones are offering. And yet, even the ones that they are given to us, we're not able to make full, complete payment to them. So why would you have any problem if Embed says, don't worry about gas, we will take care of gas supplies?
No, that's not it. If Embed has given us that story that don't worry about gas, we'll take care of gas, we will give Thanksgiving. What Embed is saying is that 15% that the discos are paying,
yes,
which is not even up to my 30% I need to operate. Out of that, I should give 15% of that, or 65% of the 15% to the gas suppliers. Our argument is, once we do that, we are as good as not able to even generate, because as I speak to you, I can mention 3 companies that have not been able to pay salaries.
That's a problem. Have you taken your complaints to the regulator, NERC?
Yes. We wrote to NERC in September, exactly on the 30th of September. I would have brought a copy of the letter for you to see, but for confidentiality, I didn't carry it. But NEC will not deny that, because we have acknowledged copy in our file. And we raised these issues till date. We're yet to hear from NEC. So we have written. And we did not just write to NEC, we wrote to 10 other stakeholders. We wrote to the DGBP, the MD, GSN. If you know GSN, Gas Aggregator Company of Nigeria, they are in charge of the gas suppliers. So they responded saying this cost is not allowable. Because if you introduce 0.75% into the 600 billion, say if 65% constitute gas cost, if you take out 65% from 600 billion, we're looking at about 60 to 65, we're looking at about 360 and above billion. If you do 0.75% cost out of it, it's 2.7 billion that Embed want to enrich itself. So the argument is, why do you need this? Because as a service provider, the market already pays for your services. As a matter of fact, from May till date, NBET, NEC, TCN are receiving 100% of their invoices. If you follow the story, market operator has been making the discos make 100% remittance to the market services. But only the GENCOs are still receiving their 15, maximum 19%. And if you also recall, the 701 ended in December 2018. So the government promised this 600 billion also as a stopgap, but not completely to pay for everything, but just the energy component.
Let's quickly go to Lagos now. We understand we have another guest on standby.
Okay.
Ayo.
We do, but just before that, let me very quickly update that we reached out to the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of NBET, that's the Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trading PLC. She's unable to make it today. She's unavailable. And of course, we also tried to get the NERC, the regulator, to come also join us, but we haven't gotten any response. Hopefully, we will get a response, going forward after this conversation that we're having now. But now we have another stakeholder in the sector who is an electrical engineer. He services all his organization services the GENCOs, TRANCOs, and the DISCOs as well. He is the Managing Director, CEO, CCS Technology Limited, Mr. Engineer Arthur Osiagu. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Let's have a kind of background, if we may. What do you make of all of these stories that we have? On the one hand is the fact that the electricity subsector is supposed to be privatized and deregulated, so to speak. But the NBET is a wholly federal government-owned company. Please give us a background.
Well, since 2005, when we had this Electricity Reform Act, and we started breaking down what we had before, the PACN, and we sold some percentage of the distribution companies. Then some of the DISCOs were fully privatized. And our hope has always been that it's going to bring some level of improvement in power generation, distribution, and also transmission. Don't forget that government kept Transmission Company of Nigeria and also the bulk trader. Now, the truth of the matter is that the entire process is not working properly. It's not working properly because of huge debt on the side of the players. For example, the gas suppliers are owed huge sums of money. The DISCOs who are supposed to make some collections and remit to NBET, their collection rate is very, very poor, is abysmally poor. Now, the GENCOs are being owed heavily, over 700 billion. Now, we have debt on the side of the gas supplies. GENCOs are not able to pay. Then we also have huge debt on the part of GENCOs. The DISCOs are supposed to pay GENCOs through the bulk trader. Now, how this money is going to come in so that they can be, because the electricity subsector is a huge business that you require a lot of money to run it.
I want to understand this a little better. You said that the whole process is not working.
Yeah.
How is it supposed to work?
We have a template. If you remember vividly, the telecommunication subsector, everything was deregulated. And as you can see, government has no hands in the telecommunication except only for regulation, But the electricity subsector, even the DISCOs that are supposed to be on their own, government is still keeping about 40% equity. The Transmission Company of Nigeria is totally owned by government. The NBET is totally owned by government, so to say. The GENCOs, some of them have been, they are running on their own. But having an intermediary, the NBET is supposed to be a bulk trader to fill in the gap in case there are shortfalls in terms of collection from the discos. But that is not happening because discos remittances is within the limit of about 6%, sometimes 12%, which is grossly inadequate.
What is responsible for that shortfall from the discos?
Well, they complain so much about inability to rake in collections from consumers. But I've always been saying that electricity is a commodity that Nigerians really want to pay for it if it's available. But the discos, the way it is currently, because government has a stake in it. I've always been an advocate that government don't really have any business going into business. When you have a business enterprise and government has a hand in it, up to 40%, you are a joint owner with government, and government of the day is the biggest spender. So you find it difficult to take a risk, to put in all your money in that place, because you are not sure, even if government does not have a controlling stake, but you are not sure what will happen. In recent times, there have been stories that, oh, the discos are not working very well. So possibly government is thinking of taking over. So when you have these kind of uncertainties, it makes it very difficult for discos to go out, look for this money, and invest in this business because they don't know what will happen in a fortnight.
Engineer Shagu, if government, okay, well, let me just ask this pointedly. Do you think government is aware of all of these processes that you say is not working?
Government is aware.
If government is aware of it, who is supposed to nip all of this in the bud? Who is supposed to ensure that all of this rough business terrain that we're having is not happening? What's supposed to be the role of the NERC in, if there's supposed to be any at all, in intervening in this dispute, so to speak, that we're having between NERC, between the bulk company, the NBET, as well as the GENCOs?
There have been several meetings. Even the former Minister for Works, Housing and Power had several meetings with these agencies on the need for the discos to improve in terms of their remittances. But it has not worked. The level of collections from disco is still abysmal, 10%, 12%, which is enough, which is not enough to even take care of the actual cost of power generation from the GENCOs.
Who should, now we have the executive, we have the legislature. Who should be intervening in this matter at this moment? Because if there is a shutdown by the GENCOs, let me even ask you this one. Do you think that the Association of Power Generation Companies is recognized by government?
Well, I don't know the legal framework, whether it's recognized or because
one of the things that
there is freedom of association.
One of the things that NBET would argue is that, look, we don't have any signed agreement with the Association of Power Generation Companies. We only have with the individual generation companies. So if the individual generation companies are having issues, shouldn't they be approaching NBET personally as opposed to going through an association?
I think NBET should limit their intervention within the framework of what they are supposed to do. Because, you know, payment for gas purchases from the GENCO is supposed to be the responsibility of the GENCOs and the gas suppliers, okay? So, but I think because there is huge debt on the part of GENCOs in terms of paying what they have been given by the gas suppliers. And the gas suppliers have been doing as much as they can to ensure that, you know, this money comes into their coffers. That is not coming in. And that is why I think NBET is now coming in as a mediator to say, okay, I will take care of the payment for gas. Don't forget that payment of the GENCOs comes directly from the NBET. So if you don't pay the gas suppliers, I can take off some part of your money that I'm supposed to pay.
Do you see NBET doing that?
It's going to cause a lot of dislocation in the system.
So NBET shouldn't do it?
No, not for now.
What should NBET be doing?
NBET should encourage the discos to improve on their collection so that they'll be able to meet up the targets of the GENCOs.
So far, it's all ruckus between these people that you have talked about, and you said the whole thing is not working. What kind of intervention are you expecting?
You see, Ayo, as I said, MBET is government. The gas suppliers, part of them, is also government. Government should answer completely.
Yes. Okay. Well, we totally out of time here, but we need to get back to Markwe in Abuja. Engineer Usiagu is an electrical engineer and managing director, CCS Technologies Limited. Thank you very much for your time. All right, Markwe, what's the rest of the story?
Well, we understand that the federal government, has obtained a facility of about $2 billion from the World Bank. Of that, I think 600 billion naira is to stabilize the electricity sector. And I think it's contained in the medium-term expenditure framework. They are aware that, you have certain obligations with the gas companies, and they're trying to meet that shortfall. That's the reason MBET was created. Why do you think that MBET would then turn around to try and paralyze the GENCOs?
That's a very good question. That also is why we are puzzled, because an agency that is set up to make me whole is now working against my existence, which is why we had to, if you realize, between September and now we have released 2 press conferences. But if you check from way back from 2015 till now, another question you asked, why has GENCOs not reacted this way? The former management of MBET was conciliatory, was quite cordial with the GENCOs. We sit together and try to channel out solutions. But the current one, I think, with all due respect, is very, very, I don't want to use language for purposes of political correctness, but exactly as you have seen in our press statement, that is exactly what is happening.
You accuse her of being high-handed. The fact that you have to beg before anything is done. MBET is resorting to blackmail. These are some of the things that you said in your press conference. But let me ask you, has this been taken to the minister? If you've spoken to NERC and they're not intervening, and the federal government is still intervening very heavily financially in the power sector, have you laid your complaints to the minister?
The last letter I made reference to that we wrote to NERC, I told you we copied 10 other agencies. The current Minister of Power was copied, the Minister of State was copied, the Permanent Secretary was copied, amongst the other 10 I mentioned. So they are aware. It's possible they are doing something about it, but since we have not been formally notified, we may not know what they are doing. However, the reason why this press conference was released, that last week, she was, I don't want to personalize, the MBET management took the action of calling each individual GENCO investor, chairman, telling them that I have money with me, but I cannot pay you except you agree to this 0.75. They quickly informed me, and that this is what is going on. That they thought with this letter and the last press conference, and having written to all the stakeholders, this issue would have been nipped at the bud. But if this is still going on, it then means that they would take their stand, and that they are prepared for whatever the implication that will be. And also for me to correct, the media, everyone, GENCOs threatening to shut down. It's not that the GENCOs will willingly want to shut down. But the forces of economics will make them shut down. In your opening statement, you told me that the gas suppliers are already complaining that we are not able to meet our obligations to them in terms of payment. So they are resorting to maybe exporting their gas outside, which is very good for them. But what do we do? I wanted to show you these figures.
We don't have time, sadly. I wish we did have more time. We would have taken this on. But we are hoping that you will not shut down. We are hoping that, those who are concerned, who have the powers to act in this instance and resolve the disputes between GENCOs and MBET will intervene in this particular matter. And perhaps when next you come back here, it will be a better story. But we have to thank you.
Thank you so much
for sharing your time with us this morning.
For having me.
Dr. Joy Ogaje is Executive Secretary, Association of Power Generation Companies, APGC. And Sunrise Today will continue in a moment. Please stay with us.